Hey guys, so today what I'm going to try to do is come up with 11 recommendations for books for young men. Basically, I'm thinking 20-year-old men. Um, this is not typically the kind of thing that interests me. Often when I hear of things geared toward men, um, it's a very specific type of man that those things are geared toward. And I think that kind of confines people. So I'm not really just going to ramble about gender and so forth, but this is going to be 11 books for, let's say, a 20-year-old man. And you're probably wondering what I've done that gives me the power to make these recommendations for young men. I'm nearing 40 years old. I have a stable job. I work in IT, and I have two bachelor's degrees, one in English and one in IT. I speak some French, but these are all very generic sort of accomplishments that you're not going to need to look long to find. And I recognize that. I do read a lot, and so here I am coming up with, I think, 11 books that I would have liked to have been recommended when I was 20 if all of them were published. Um, yeah, so I hope that sounds interesting to you. My audience, according to the YouTube metrics, is mostly male, as in like extremely high percentage is registered as male. But I don't know. I would be skeptical if somebody when I was 20 came up to me and said, as a man, you need to do this. Who are you to tell me what I need to do as a man? And then I'd probably do something more rude and inherently masculine and chase off whoever would tell me to do something. 11 books. These books are going to be a little different than you're used to probably hearing for all men. I noticed that there are a few authors who always get recommended. You always see like an Ernest Hemingway book. So I did include an Ernest Hemingway book in this, but it's probably his least common. It's actually my favorite of his novels, but again, it's not as high literary art as some. I tend to see a lot of Dostoevsky. You're not going to get Dostoevsky from me. Um, a lot of writers like that, these kind of old ponderous books. There are going to be 3 philosophy books. And so what I'm going to do is try to group these according to their subject, and then we'll look at them however we want to once we've divvied up those subjects. The other thing that I'm going to include here is there are 2 books by women. It seems very strange to me often that people are talking about books to recommend young men, completely ignorant that there are many men writers who are very masculine and hunting oriented and outdoorsy and that kind of Ernest Hemingway vibe, still writing today. But yeah, if when you're a 20-year-old guy, your interest is like mine was, and it's more women than anything else, it would make sense that you would want to spend some time with a wise woman who's maybe written a book, and you can read that book. It also gives you something to talk about that's not just the generic masculine ideas. And there are things you can find out in books that you won't find out anywhere else when they're written by women. So if you're a man and you're reading a book by a woman, you might stumble into things that you've never heard before. simply because if you're not often around the company of women, there are subjects that are more private, and they might not want to discuss that. You're edified by learning these things. So without further ado, my name is Mark, and this is my channel, Several Books. Okay, as I said, I'm going to be splitting this up into 3 different categories. I have 3 philosophy or theory books that I'm going to be talking about first. I second have a poetry book for you that I think any American should read, but really it's a good book for any young man. It doesn't matter what country you're in, as long as you speak English. The writer we're going to talk about is, I have to include him. And then finally, I'm going to look at novels. I'm going to be presenting these in publication order. And so we're going to start with theory, and we're going to go back to ancient Greece. Now, the Aristotle book that I own, I actually own, I think, 2, but this is the one I did use when I was in school. The book that I'm recommending you is the Nicomachean Ethics. Aristotle is known as a virtue ethicist. In my opinion, it is more productive to recommend somebody who is unfamiliar with a lot of philosophy, maybe dabbling here and there and looking for a more substantive work to dip their toes into. I think directly going to virtue ethics is probably going to do more to influence your daily actions in a positive way than I see a lot of the online stoicism and stoicism bro types. I don't have a huge amount to say outside of that Aristotle wrote about what is now called virtue ethics. Everything for him was about hitting that kind of mean that if you have 2 options, you want to fall in the middle, and that's the most rational approach. To say more, I'd probably want to have credentials in philosophy. Being familiar with Aristotle helped me a lot in college. I did study Aristotle some when I was in school. But yeah, I'm just recommending check out Aristotle. If you pursue philosophy in any capacity, and let's say you are 20 and you're in college and you're watching my channel, check out Aristotle, because it'll pop up over and over again, even in different subjects. So that's the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. The second book that we're going to look at is Walter Benjamin's Illuminations. This edition does have a great foreword by Hannah Arendt. Benjamin was a member of the Frankfurt School. His most famous work is probably the work of art in the technological age of representation, I think is what the title is. Benjamin is a favorite of mine. His writing style is very unusual, and it has like a very strong word choice all the time for creating a voice. The essays in this book are magic. It's not just me who thinks this. If you look at even Harold Bloom included Illuminations in his canon, his Western canon. The big essays that I remember from this book are the essays on Kafka's America, an essay on translation, and if I remember right, the book opens with an essay on collecting and moving books. Benjamin was basically a Marxist. I think that there is some kind of tension between him and the Frankfurt School classification. I don't think that Benjamin ever did the political endorsements that caused some members of the left problems later. He was a good friend of Bertolt Brecht, who you've probably heard of. There is so much in Walter Benjamin that I don't even really think that if I made multiple videos, I would come close to scratching the surface. The biggest thing here is that Benjamin will help you in any literary studies type situation. He's great. I just don't know what else to say. He's a favorite of mine. I would encourage everybody to check out Illuminations by Walter Benjamin. Okay. So the final theory book we're going to look at, the most contemporary theory book that I'm going to talk about, is it's called Pornotopia, which I think would immediately get me demonetized just for saying the title of the book if I'm understanding. But it's a good thing I'm not a monetized channel. The book is by Paul B. Preciado, and Paul B. Preciado is a trans man. He is considered extremely influential in the art world, if I understand correctly. I believe that he's teaching somewhere in Europe political theory and does some stuff with aesthetics. Pornotopia is a genealogical critique in the manner of Foucault. The critique that Preciado is undertaking is essentially the genealogy of the contemporary male stereotype. If we think of Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique as kind of creating the feminist movement in the 20th century in the United States, we do have a change and reaction, according to Preciado, in the identity of men. And what Preciado posits is that the genesis of this change in men was the Playboy magazine. I don't know if Playboy is still printed. I think I saw something in like a story on a newspaper website that they had stopped doing the types of photographs that they were known for doing. It's really kind of not my world. But this book is fascinating. And the reason I would recommend it is because I think Preciado makes a very substantial case for why the magazine Playboy, which was such a huge and widely read publication, really did kind of create the men's counter movement that occurred at that time. And what Preciado talks about that what Preciado talks about for the time before Playboy is not to say that men didn't do X, Y, Z. They were hunters and they went out and they did their thing and all of this. It's to say that with the changing world and the changing mores, for instance, women are now being more and more in the workplace and so forth. After this and all of this, men have to react in some way. The world is changing. Women don't want to be homemakers anymore necessarily. And what comes of that is that men now basically need to be equipped to manage their own personal space and their living quarters. And what Preciado talks about is how much architecture and things like design appeared in that magazine. So it's really fascinating. It's as if the magazine kind of created an image of a certain type of man, and then this image was proliferated, and Playboy would tell people what to read, what to watch on television, which types of alcohol to consume, who to find attractive. Because if you think about it, it's one of these kind of it's a certain personality people tend to adapt, and an aesthetic. The same way we see so many aesthetics, today, different genres, subcultures, and so forth. So, Pornotopia by Paul B. Preciado is great. If you're wondering why you can't succeed as a certain XYZ type of male, maybe you should be pointing the finger at these old structures, these old enterprises that no longer really should be in charge of how we create our lives. A magazine from the 50s that started in the 1953 should not have control still over what it means to be a man. So that is Pornotopia by Paul B. Preciado. The poetry book that I'm going to talk about is Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. This is my Barnes & Noble copy of Leaves of Grass, and it has the original Leaves of Grass and the Deathbed edition. So Whitman basically just updated Leaves of Grass throughout his life. I don't think he ever wrote another poetry book. I think what he did was new editions of Leaves of Grass would come out with new poems in the book that weren't previously printed. I do know that, I'm mostly certain that he did occasionally edit poems along the way, but I think it was mostly about new issues of the book containing new copies of the poem. New poetry, excuse me. I had a friend who told me this was some liberal crap when I was waxing poetic about Walt Whitman. He's not the edgiest writer of all time. There are some really interesting poems in here, though. Knowing Walt Whitman's enumerative style, his lists, it changes how you will read a lot of American literature. You will hear echoes of Whitman in writers like Philip Roth, Saul Bellow, and so forth. He's more of a poppy type figure because the style, the free verse is not, it's free verse, and it was easily consumed when it was written. This book basically was like a life-changing thing for me. I read it when I was in college. It really changed my idea of what poetry should be. It has some great meditations on kind of what it means to be alive and in a body. You do get everything from the beauty of the stars. When I heard The Learned Astronomer to the famous poem about Abraham Lincoln, my captain, my captain. I love this book. It's got some lofty ideas in it, some things that you would hope people would strive for. So that's Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. Okay, so we're on to the novels. Now, for the novels, the first guy who shows up on the list is Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway is... he's not nearly as good as some people want him to be. He's not super culturally relevant anymore. His ideas of masculinity do not appeal to women generally, and they do seem a bit antiquated. I like Hemingway. I think that he was a great writer. He had a huge influence on American literature. But my problem with him is that sometimes his influence seems stifling. Hemingwayan situations or sentences will pop up in everything that is not incredibly emotional, with a very reactive, narrator or something like that. People often recommend The Sun Also Rises. The Sun Also Rises is an okay book. I've read it. I don't think it's great. I've read all of the novels that were published in Hemingway's lifetime, and A Movable Feast, as well as a large number of his short stories. My favorite two books, or my favorite three books, are the short stories. He's a great short story writer. I enjoy him. He wrote a lot of stories, not like an enormous amount, but the complete stories of Ernest Hemingway, the short stories, it's like a 500-page book, I think. I like the short stories. I like To Have and To Have Not, and I like For Whom the Bell Tolls. For Whom the Bell Tolls is probably a better book. I would prefer it. It also shows up on the Le Monde Top 100 list, which is a French list. Le Monde. To Have and To Have Not. I decided to talk about this for two main reasons. The first reason is that nobody ever talks about it. The second reason is that it's shorter, and I imagine reaching a slightly younger demographic for this video than my typical demographic, but it's basically the same. According to YouTube metrics, 20-year-olds do watch me. So, To Have and To Have Not is basically a story about smuggling. And there's a gunfight in it. The guy's missing his arm from a war injury. And I don't know what else to say except that I think that with To Have and To Have Not, what you are getting is the more adventurous Hemingway. It's a great novel. It doesn't make sense to me why no one ever talks about this, except that he's smuggling, for Cuba. I think it's a more fun book. I like Robert Stone. I'm looking at my Robert Stone on my bookshelf right now. And I have a video on Robert Stone. And if you have heard of Robert Stone or you've read Robert Stone and you want to read the predecessor, this version of Hemingway is very clearly an influence on Robert Stone. I do find that people overstate the reserve in the Hemingway paragraph, the Hemingway narration. A lot of times people will focus on a lack of interiority. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because when I think of Hemingway, I tend to think of an overbearing interiority almost. I'm not saying Hemingway was Joyce, but there is something almost Joycean in his concern with the thoughts of his characters. So, this is probably not the the best book you're ever going to read. But I would encourage you to read Hemingway. I just would encourage you to read this one. I think The Old Man and the Sea is way overplayed. The Sun Also Rises is certainly more famous, but are you going to enjoy it as much? And the only reason I'd say to choose this over For Whom the Bell Tolls is that For Whom the Bell Tolls, I think, is like 550 pages or something, and not everybody's in the mood to read a 550-page book. So, To Have and Have Not by Ernest Hemingway. I have been desperate to talk about this next author on this channel, almost as much as I have been to talk about Toni Morrison, and I've been looking for a reason to cram their names into my videos, because I haven't read their work, or all of their work, more recently, and it's difficult to make a video for somebody when you can't remember their books as well. The author I'm talking about is Paul Bowles. I've read all of Paul Bowles' novels. He doesn't have many. I think there are only 5. I've read a hefty amount of his short fiction. I read his largest collection. And I've read some of his nonfiction. He's got a memoir, and there's some travel writing and other things. This is his longest book, and it comes in at about 400 pages. So I'm violating my rule of wanting to go on the shorter end when I'm making book recommendations, especially if I want people to read them. The reason I'm recommending this book is just because I think it's probably his best. I actually prefer it to The Sheltering Sky, and you get more political writing in this than Bowles is known for typically. I like political novels. A lot of people seem not to like them. This is basically a revolution novel in Morocco. There was an uprising in Morocco, and the main character is a white guy, basically a Bowles stand-in. I think he's a writer. He meets a kid, and the kid comes from like a really... There's some difficult stuff mentioned in the book that I don't feel totally comfortable saying on camera or on YouTube. Yeah, there is... The kid comes from kind of a crappy area. And what ends up happening is there's an uprising in Morocco, and the man and the woman he's with are kind of called out and as Americans. And the young boy from the from the crappy area basically guides them and sort of saves them from being taken for people who are against Morocco. Basically, Bowles says that you're going to be associated with the bad guys, the colonizers, whoever it is. No matter who you what you do here, you're a white guy from the U.S. In this area where you're foreign. I really like Paul Bowles. Paul Bowles is known as a distinct American voice. There are a lot of writers who really liked Paul Bowles. It's very clear that Robert Stone read Paul Bowles. The thing is that he does fall into some stereotypes about the Arab world that don't really hold true. My understanding is that Edward Said, who's known for his book Orientalism, really had some problems with Bowles. Other writers who I do respect have written favorably of Bowles, so that's really what's going on. I'm encouraging you to read this because even though the country that's being written about does not exist in the same way anymore, it's a great book about kind of a world traveling man. Bowles is is often described, though, as I've said, as not. He stereotypes his surroundings, is the best way I can say it. It's not to say that he's negative or anything like that universally, but he's judgmental from a mindset that was. This book was written in 1950 something. The next book that I'm going to talk about is V.S. Naipaul's A House for Mr. Biswas. I read this book when I was in college. It's a favorite of mine. The book is basically about a guy who wants to have his own home in Trinidad and Tobago. This is a book written about village life in that country, and so you are getting a world that is for some people difficult to relate to. On top of that, Naipaul is often seen as a British writer, so this is not an American book if you're from the U.S. and looking for recommendations for that. I am going to recommend some other Americans. Paul Bowles was American, by the way. You don't forget that. So he really has a very distinctly American voice. Naipaul. A House for Mr. Biswas is, the guy is trying to build a house for most of the book. He gets married, he grows up, he has a house, the house doesn't work out. He's living with his wife's family. The book is hilarious. It's not to say that you're laughing on every page, but there are very distinct moments in here that will probably have you laughing out loud at the book. This is maybe not the typical recommendation, but my justification for saying that A House for Mr. Biswas by V.S. Naipaul is a good book for somebody who's in their 20s is because you will see that a man's kind of struggle to make his own way in life, to build his own home, to set up his world around him and kind of make of himself. It's an international situation, but I think having said what I just said also will justify why should a man read this book. Well, the book is the kind of dream of being a self-made man, even in an environment where nobody is building skyscrapers and nobody is being the head of enterprise or anything. You can fulfill that from any location in the world, and if you're tying your value to your house, which I don't think you should do, that's something that again is nearly universal. It's something that people associate with becoming whole. Finding shelter. So, A House for Mr. Biswas by V.S. Naipaul. The next two books that I'm going to talk about are the two books by women, and the first of those is The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing. This is a phenomenal novel, in my opinion. I did talk to some people who felt that it was maybe a little unedited in some places, but why I'm recommending this book to, say, 20-year-old men is because you will get very frank discussions of women's lives, their bodies, and their sexualities by reading this book. On top of that, I thought all of the meditations on communist politics were pretty interesting, and the way that she describes the world learning of Stalin's crimes and adjusting to that is also very, very interesting. The book is metafictional, so it's got some formal experimentation going on, and overall I just think it's a great book. I cannot recommend it enough. That's The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing. The next book that we're going to talk about is a favorite. This is a more recent favorite. I have a video on Kathy Acker, who we're talking about, but it was one of the first videos that I made. I was more happy just to have gotten the video out, so I don't exactly talk in depth about the books that I do go through as much as I would like to. Blood and Guts in High School is it's a kind of collage about a girl. You get her relationship with either her father, her boyfriend, or her brother. It's not really clear who it is all the time. And that girl moves. She gets caught up in human trafficking. She gets trafficked to, I think, somewhere in Persia. There is, I think it's Farsi on the page here. Yeah, so she does have some Persian in there. The book is written in a style, as I said, it's a kind of collage that makes not exactly a coherent story. It's like you're getting different periods of this Janie, her life, kind of smushed together in the same time, and so it's not linear or anything like that. Once Janie is in Persia, she is basically rescued by Jean Genet, if I'm remembering right. Jean Genet, the French writer, LGBTQ writer. I've read everything that Genet wrote for the most part. I haven't read the poetry, but all of the novels, the memoir, and the majority of the plays. So I really like him. But why I'm saying this is that here you can see a drawn map, if you can see that. She incorporates a lot of different styles in her books. We've got some more visual things going on here. We've got some poetry in the book. It's kind of like the quintessential different form book. When you read books sometimes, and there's like there's a narrator who's writing a journal, and for some of the chapters in the book, they're supposedly from this journal. Kathy Acker basically uses a whole lot of different techniques like that, puts them all together, and then does them in a more poignant and forceful way than I've ever seen them done before. And the effects of her novels are really remarkable. This is a book that's kind of a quintessential feminist classic. I am not telling you as a man to go out and become a feminist. I would think it would be a good thing if men are concerned with the rights of women and making sure they're liberated and so forth. But as far as like, go do this, and that's not why I'm making this video. This is a great book. It's a book that will change the way you think about things. I think that there are some people who would see this video, maybe who don't watch a lot of my videos or who are new to different types of art, and they might be disgusted by it. But I would say that sometimes that disgust is healthy. And understanding it and what happens when you feel it and why you feel it can be very valuable. So that's a possibility. If you read this book, you might be turned off by some things in it. I think it's a great book. It's extremely creative, for lack of a better way to put it. It's creative. It's so many different forms, so many different things going on the page. It's a really wonderful experience. That's Blood and Guts in High School by Kathy Acker. The second to last book we're going to talk about is part of why I wanted to make this video. I was seeing all of the videos about, how to be a good young man, and then the advice is, read Marcus Aurelius, never open another book, go out, lift weights, and be an alpha, and that doesn't tell you how to do anything. You're like, well, Marcus Aurelius is really valuable, and I'm not saying he's not, but this combination of things is not a life. And so I'm trying to introduce you to stuff aside from Old Man and the Sea. It is what it is. But an alternative for these kind of masculine avenues is James Salter. And this is Solo Faces. This is my favorite James Salter novel. He's most known for A Sport and a Pastime. I don't think A Sport and a Pastime should be considered his greatest novel. I'm kind of left thinking like, why is that? When I read A Sport and a Pastime, it's a very French kind of story, and I think that Salter is so interested in French culture, adds some of the flavor of that book. But Solo Faces is a totally different type of novel. Solo Faces is about a mountain climber. And when the novel starts, he's repairing a roof, I think, of a church. It's been years since I read this, but he's a roofer, and he's got this history of mountain climbing. And as the book goes on, one of his friends climbs, I forget which mountain. It's something like Everest. It's one of these huge things. I don't remember if it was Everest. I don't think it was. But the main character has to go out there and save him, basically. And he goes out there alone and does that. This book deals with depression, with wanting to end stuff. It deals with love and affairs. Our main character has a situation with a woman. I love this book. It is very sparsely written. There is a lot of dialogue in it. The sentences that Salter is known for are present here. They tend to be very short, quick, lean, fast-moving fiction. The book is sometimes criticized for being a little male-headed, but I'm recommending books for 20-year-old men. So forgive the guy if he's thinking too much like a dude. This is what I would recommend over Ernest Hemingway, actually. If you're getting recommended, Ernest Hemingway. I didn't recommend any Robert Stone books here because I've got a video of Stone, and he's not as important in my mind as specifically this James Salter book. I love this book. I cannot say enough positive things about it. Go out and read it. It is a great book, especially for like a 20-year-old dude. It's a very literary novel, but the subject is not typical literary stuff. He's not a stuffy guy, exploring libraries. Dude's a mountain climber in this book. And, yeah, that's where we are with that. So that's our second to last book, Solo Faces by James Salter. The last book I'm going to recommend, I don't know if people are going to roll their eyes or if people are going to write it off, but it's Fortress of Solitude by Jonathan Lethem. Fortress of Solitude is named for the hideaway of Superman. The book, one of the main things it's about is what counts as art, kind of, and who gets to make the distinction. So Jonathan Lethem has a view that a lot of people who are critics of art are being critical of forms of art that are very valuable. Lethem himself has been a comic book writer, and he's written a few books about different subjects too, I think, but he's known for his unabashed interest in Philip K. Dick and J.G. Ballard, in science fiction and comic books. So the book is one of the things it's about is how to how to incorporate these different interests in different things. Now, the book is a novel, you know, so I'm talking about a very heady subject, and the main characters of the novel are a white guy named Dylan Ebdis and a black guy named Mingus Rood. And they meet when they're kids, and they basically hold their friendship through various times, and they grow up and they're adults. The book deals a lot with racial issues in New York. There's a lot of discussion about how Mingus is judged, about how Dylan is judged. Dylan is definitely judged by people. He encounters difficulties in predominantly black areas in New York, the same way that Mingus encounters difficulties in white areas. And so the thing that really makes the novel what it is that Dylan finds a magic ring. And he's like flying and stuff with this ring. And this is a section in the middle of the book. The majority of the book is a realist novel, but there is this interaction with this ring. Yeah, I don't have a lot else to say about this. I recommend Fortress of Solitude. It's definitely an interesting book. It has a lengthy magical realist section in it, but it is bookended by ostensibly realist fiction. The end is a little different. It's kind of experimental and might remind you of Ralph Waldo Ellison's Invisible Man. It's very clear to me that that's probably what Lethem was reading or looking or using as a text, looking for inspiration. But yeah, you get a lot of stuff in here about race, class. There's some gay stuff in it. It's not the whole book, but there is some exploration, and I think that even though Lethem might just strike you as, oh, he's a guy who writes for the New Yorker, he's one of those Ivy League types or whatever, your idea might be of that publication. There's real value in this. So that's Fortress of Solitude by Jonathan Lethem. Now, before this video has been edited and hopefully condensed a little bit, I'm running into a 50-minute time, and I didn't expect to be talking for 50 minutes. I'm not making this video to try to tell you how to be a man. I have no idea how to do that myself. But the books that I'm recommending you are books that I wish I had when I was a 20-year-old. They're also including and influenced by a lot of these lists that I'm seeing shown for, 10 books to read as a young man. Often when I see those, as I said, I'm turned off. So hopefully this video does not repulse you. But yeah, this is 11 books that I thought were valuable, and I hope you check some of them out. Alright, thanks. Bye-bye.